Audacity is recording.
All right. Here, you want to do that nice little old-timey countdown clap real quick?
Absolutely.
All right. 3, 2, 1. I still haven't fully wrapped my head around why that works.
Yeah,
it does seem to.
If a sound moving away from a clapping hands moves at 50 feet a second, but the Skype delay is 44 seconds per 5 seconds.
Hoo boy, Skype. Has anything really changed?
Skype changed.
Hello and welcome. This is a new podcast called The Death of YouTube because it made you click it.
That's actually the birth of YouTube. That's the real problem, right? But
exactly.
Then again, if you're listening to it and not watching it, we have to have a point.
The podcast is actually going to be about our experience making a YouTube channel during the early days of YouTube, which the thing I'm referring to as the early days is like 2010 onward. It goes earlier than that, but I wasn't making videos then. So,
right.
I'm Kyle C. Sullivan. I'm here with my co-host Ian Kahn.
Howdy.
That's the other voice there.
Yep.
And we both started making a sketch comedy YouTube channel called Door Monster that you may have heard of. I assume most people listening to this right off the bat are only people who have watched Door Monster, but who knows? Maybe we'll get some other people through Spotify or whatever. We started like 2014 is the technical start year of like the weekly videos and of our Door Monster Essential Binge Watch playlist, which is what we're going to be covering during this podcast. We're just going to go through episode by episode and cover one video per podcast and sort of go over our experience making it and just our lives surrounding that on the internet, which you might recognize as the premise of Door Monster's Tiny Table if you listened to that very short run podcast. We're just doing it again, but instead we're starting at the beginning. Matt's not here.
A loss to us all, actually. It's really, I don't know why you decided, like, if it didn't work with Matlock, maybe we'll try with Ian, and that's like a better idea. That's
so genuinely, I realized at some point the only reason I did any of these things were just to like facilitate aspects of my own life that I am incapable of managing otherwise, and I just wanted to hang out with you more.
Right. I mean,
I just thought this would be a good way to do it.
That's why I texted back yes to like as soon as you said podcast before you told me why you wanted to do it or what it was about, because it didn't really matter what it was going to be about. I knew like it's not like you can control me. It's going to be me hanging out with you on a podcast no matter what. So.
Right, yeah. And I think the vibe will be a little bit different, too, because you were there the whole time. Matt had, like, questions, but you remember.
Right.
You were part of it. Anyway, today we're not actually starting on Toast Launcher, because I figured as part of the introduction, we should talk about before the binge watch list, and then we'll actually, like, get into the first episode of it next week. But I was just curious, how do you remember first getting into, like, internet video when that was the first thing? Just, like, in your life, just as a consumer of it.
Definitely before YouTube. YouTube was like at some point newfangled and like kind of exciting because unlike everything I'd been watching for years, it just worked, which is very funny to say now. But like it's got to be like Flash cartoons, right? Like they were hosted on websites that people made with the express purpose of like showing people their Flash cartoons.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that was just like this entire... I think sometimes about like Blockbuster and how that's this weird experience that literally nobody before or ever again will have. Like it's just this one little micro experience that we had that nothing is even kind of similar to. And I feel like the Flash video era is similar to that. Even like Frontier moves and it's on TikTok now and stuff, but it's not anything like what Newgrounds was. And Newgrounds isn't anything like what TikTok was. They're just their own weird... And Vine existed at some point.
That's
We're not going to get into
that
because we had nothing...
That's not true.
But yeah, no, same. I also had this... I went on to... I actually didn't even start on Newgrounds. I was in... I remember my friend in 5th grade telling me about this cool thing called flashplayer.com.
Woo.
I don't know how they named it that, because that's the name of the device, of the player. They weren't Adobe owned, so that seems illegal.
Well, Adobe more than made up for that in the crackback.
Yep. Sure did. So yeah, I caught my first few videos on there.
I think like if I have to pick like a site, it's like it's Legendary Frog, it's Legendary Lily Pad, right? Whatever though.
Oh really? You went like his personal
That's
website?
where I watched a lot of it. Yeah, like it's weird because like so I have to like separate out in my head like I don't know, comedy and internet videos, which are not always the same thing. Now they basically are, but like we used to have America's Funniest Home Videos. You remember those? It's like they were basically TikToks. You know, they was just like this is 15 seconds of somebody's life that in retrospect is probably very staged. And
actually, TikTok really does have much more of like a home video feel than like even early.
Yeah.
Because in the early days of Newgrounds, it was all people wanting to like publish stories. Like it was like wannabe like child filmmakers who were like, I can do this in my own house with my own computer and my shitty direct to tape camera that my parents have.
Right. Well, this is like I'm sure we're going to come back to this over and over again. Like the real like so there's two aspects to technology and like social interaction, which are both true always, which is that they are always changing and they are always the same. Right. Like the way that that any art form evolves starts with people who are skilled, and that's kind of weird. You couldn't put anything on Newgrounds unless you had the skill of some kind to actually make something that's kind of like an art and put it on a thing that played it for you. Yeah,
it was much more of a meritocracy for sure. Well, because it started with just a guy publishing his work on his own website. I don't really know who we're going to attract to this podcast, so just in case, Flash videos were like... It was animations made with a software that was built for making interactive websites. It was not made for making like full animated cartoons at all, but it was this tool that you could get a hold of, and people figured out you could use it for making animated cartoons. And at a low discount of $700, it was way cheaper than any other actual professional industry alternative at the time.
Right.
And so yeah, if you could get a hold of one, or like your school had it or whatever, you could use it to like make these animations that ran like part of a web page. Like web browsers used Flash as part of their stuff. It was like a Java kind of, it was like running a program, actually. Yeah. It was like code running, and it was just like vector images. It wasn't pixel based at all. And so it has its own flair, maybe is the word. And I don't know. There was one guy named Tom Fulp who figured out how to do a bunch of cool stuff kind of on his own, and was just kind of an enterprising young lad, and put it up on a website back in the 90s, like way before I was even had internet access. And he started realizing that other people were doing the same thing, so he would like email them and ask them to put those videos on his website, and then he would get people emailing him asking to put their videos on his website, and then eventually he was like, this is a lot of work. I'm having to like list these videos manually every single day. He, I think, got some friends that knew code, like knew how to code sites, and they built this portal submission system where people could go add their own videos and then get the videos judged by the other people on the site. And if it passed general judgment, then it would go, like, it would stay on the site, and if it was really good, it would hit the front page. So it was this like really early proto version of like YouTube and Reddit. Mm-hmm. And like forum systems and like all this stuff just built by these random dudes, and then I think they figured out like internet ads even before everybody else. So it was pretty groundbreaking, way ahead of its time in pretty much every possible way. Like it was doing all of the things that YouTube does now, but on this like little like mom and pop shop scale, Mm-hmm. So, like, I messaged Tom Fulp multiple times with questions, and he would just respond. Like, it was just like, it was like that.
Most of the things in, like, the frontier days of the internet, like, like 2005, really, it's all done by these people who are just, like, guys who want to mess around with computers. Like, that's the target audience, right?
Right.
My dad did the same thing. My dad has a world-spanning running club, because he's run marathons before. He's a passionate, like, athletic runner. But all the people in his running club are people who had access to listserv email lists in 1991. So they're like very specifically running nerds.
Wow.
And that's the audience. And I think
That's so
most
cool.
isn't it though? Like it's a lot of this internet pioneering was like that. It's just people who kind of like had like a thing they like to do and also computers.
Yeah, basically. I guess that's pretty much, and that's more or less how I I was I guess an early iteration of like the I want to be an influencer generations, weirdly. Like I was in probably one of the earliest groups to be inspired by the people who did it first, just based on my age range. Because most of those other people were people like the people that I watched were being influenced more by like indie filmmakers and comedians and stuff, and they realized they could use the internet to post the things they were doing and like again shooting with their camcorders or whatever. And then I found that stuff as a kid because I had weird friends that went on to on the Flash sites and told me they were there. So like my earliest actual specific influence was Knox, who was the his name's Robert Benfer, and he did the Clay World series, which were stop motion animated things. They were these little featureless blue humanoid shaped blob people, and he had a webcam because that was new back then. And he made these little animations where he would just do like on his desk. He didn't put any flair into it at all. The story was there's blue people, they live on a desk, and so he would just do these little animations where he would move them a little bit and then take a picture and move them a little bit and take a picture.
It's amazing. Just having to explain the technology of Flash, right, and saying that was like pioneering because you had to sort of know how to do it, and then just going back one step to. And this guy was doing claymation with stop motion. It's like the story of like the guy who built Roller Coaster Tycoon in like assembly, like machine code. Like, programming languages that predate that are like the foundation of programming languages. Yeah. It's like he was like that. He he built Flash animations in assembly, which is the stupidest thing.
No, he would photograph them, convert that to a video, because there was like a stop motion feature with the software that came with the camera. I remember because I learned which camera he used and bought that, and that's what I started using first. Nice. And then he would embed that really low resolution video clip into a Flash animation and then export that and upload that to Newgrounds. Wow. That was the original way of doing it.
What a terrible idea.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrendous. I can't believe if any of those videos survived. It's a miracle. But that was the first time I found those videos, and my fate was sealed from there. Yeah. It was I found that, and then I found his website that he had also built, and then he was doing a podcast before anybody knew what podcasts were. I was listening to a podcast by these two knuckleheads. This guy and the guy that made Charlie the Unicorn were both buddies, and they had a podcast together that they recorded over Skype, which is how we found Skype. Like, you used Skype early because I heard about it from these guys and then demanded all my friends get on it. And I just saw this thing. He was like a kid from Texas, actually, around San Antonio, who just did this in his bedroom. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I have ever seen in my entire life, and I'm going to do anything I can to be this. I'm going to make videos. I'm going to build a website. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do it all, baby. It's like one-man production teams. And that was sort of the shtick back then. It was just like, you're just one guy doing all of this yourself, and if you do it hard enough and good enough, people will like it, and then eventually money will fall from the sky? Question mark.
Right, you're right. That question mark's a big one, right? Like, that's the problem. I don't know. It took us a long time to make that question mark happen. I mean,
it certainly was not my primary motivator.
Right. Man, I was trying to think. So, like, before we had Newgrounds, right? Like, I was trying, like, because it shocked me to hear that he was exporting these as Flash. Like, what would you do? And I guess, like, do you remember, like, just downloading movie trailers as files to play on, like, Quick Player?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, I don't think there was really a, like, go-to watching video files site. That was the big issue, is that transferring video files over the internet of that time was, like, impossible.
this is what we like on a technical level. This is what we mean by streaming, right? Like
Right.
a streaming video is something that plays on the page, which is what Flash did before anything
Actually, yeah,
else.
note about that with Flash. It didn't do that. Well, sorry, it did try to do that, and so as the animator, you had to learn how to code in Flash enough to make a screen at the beginning that would forcibly pause the video and load the whole thing before then playing the video, because most people, it would just like freeze otherwise. You had to. They were called preloaders.
Right.
Newgrounds had them pre-made, so you could download them and just copy and paste the stuff that they had made into the. This is why we all know how to use computers as well as we do, because it was just required to do anything.
Right. Well, and because it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
so much troubleshooting.
it was the stupid the best way to do anything is to do it wrong a lot. And that's what this was. This was very wrong. This is absolutely the incorrect way to do it. It's amazing.
I did full on DVD menus for some of my videos. I had like special
remember,
features in the Fable experience and stuff. There was this whole very specific art form to making Flash videos because of the weird combination of knowledge you had to have.
And it's so weird how it bled into public consciousness in silly ways later. Like I remember watching. This is probably my deepest kernel of like individual Newgrounds-ish memory that doesn't have to do with you, which is like not a whole like a huge section of my internet experience, because obviously once that it expanded wildly after that. But like part of my only individual Newgrounds experience was watching Naruto fan flashes on YouTube, right? On or maybe pre-YouTube, but not on Newgrounds. Eventually, I watched them on Flash sites, but originally I watched them as like YouTube videos, and they still had the preloaders. And it was like, this is a cool little part of the animation. I don't know why they made it. It was like part of the art.
Yeah, it would just be in the video because you would just have to like screen capture whatever was going on. Because that was how the original like convert. Actually, not even the original. Even the robust version of converting Flash animations was just screen capture, because that was the only way to do it. You just had to play it on. It was like, it almost was like scanning film in a weird way. Like you just had to like play it as high of a resolution as you could, and then just capture that like you were photographing it frame by frame.
Funny.
And so there were, I don't know, people smarter than me figured out how to start putting video onto websites where you could actually like stream it back effectively, and that's what YouTube was. YouTube ran off of Flash when it first came out. Like the original YouTube player was a Flash-based player that used the fact that you could slow down the buffering of the video to preload the YouTube video. Like it literally was this weird kind of technology that we're talking about that I dabbled in is what they used as the basis for making videos watchable on the internet.
That's very funny. Because that's the whole deal, right? Is because back when 2005, that's YouTube's like birth date, right? Like what's your average internet speed for the like average household?
You had trouble loading JPEG images like that. You had to wait for the JPEG to scan down.
And so like there's no way you're actually like loading like actual frames of actual resolution videos.
Right.
So but if Flash is already so broken, it knows how to like wait on itself. I guess YouTube could go, I guess we could do that. I mean, I remember doing that. I remember sitting and watching I have a very, very fond memory of begging my dad to let me go on YouTube so I could load up a 10-minute battle from Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi for the Wii. But it took like 30 minutes for that 10-minute video to load, and then I watched it and I loved it.
That was just kind of part of the experience. Was like, I don't want to, I don't want to sound too old by just getting into like, we used to just have to, you just sat around and waited for stuff to load before you could watch it.
Watching the paint dry was part of the experience.
So like the big thing for me was, I think I immediately got into the filmmaker side of things, which was like, this is a way to post the stuff that I want to make already so that other people can watch it. Like that was the big separation, is that like you were always going to have to get a job and get into Hollywood and do that stuff before anybody could like see the things that you wanted to make, and this just provided an opportunity to make it immediately, which I learned by watching people who did that because like really early on. Well, I guess really early, the earliest YouTube I remember seeing that like I was like, I'm watching YouTube and this is a thing made for this platform, I think was Charlie the Unicorn. So that's where I just went. And then I learned that the two people that I had like started watching the internet for knew each other and had a podcast, which was kind of weird.
Right.
And I think that was my first one. And then I remember like the earliest sketches. Like I don't remember really getting into watching YouTube regularly as like its own platform until 2010-ish. By which point you and I were already like hanging out, and we were. I graduated high school in 2010, so I was moving on to college, and that's when I started finding like comedy sketch artists that like had good equipment and were making short films on YouTube, like Julian Smith or Freddie Wong or some of the people that were actually doing like these weekly like short movies. And before that, Dom Ferris was a good crossover. He started on Newgrounds doing animations and then was doing movies on YouTube. And the Charlie the Unicorn guy also was doing short films that were like, 4:3 standard definition shot with a camcorder kind of things. So I had this collection of things building up where I was like, oh, I could, this is possible to like make a movie and then post it online and people will watch it, which is honestly kind of an anomaly even today, because now for the opposite problem, because there's too much of it. But
yeah, like I've seen so many people, like, I don't know, random people who come across like my Instagram or something suggested for use or whatever, who are like, I have a 4-time awarded film and it's only available on the streaming service like Zumbut. And but we're really excited that Zumbut has partnered with us to bring you this opportunity. It's like, buddy, I have deleted 3 things that I could have called Zumbut yesterday. Like, I'm not downloading another one.
I can't even tell if you're remembering that or making it up.
I mean, neither.
Do you remember any particular? Had you gotten into like YouTube content creators beforehand? I also remember an early memory of YouTube and you was coming over to your house and watching all of the Team Fortress 2 Meet the Team trailers.
Yeah, right. Which we also undoubtedly had to wait to load.
Yeah, probably.
So here's my deep, dark confession. I did not then, nor at any point afterwards, nor at any time currently, have ever actually consumed YouTube content as a platform.
Yeah, that's fair.
I watched things that are hosted on YouTube. Often they were made for YouTube specifically, but I have never actually just gone and checked on, like, okay, I watch, Donkey. I watch Video Game Donkey. That's literally the only person whose videos I click on when he makes them.
Okay.
Other than that, like, literally, I would watch things that were funny. I wouldn't follow them on YouTube or like from platform to platform. I don't know. It's weird. Like this is like like so much of my, like, you come at this from at it from like a creator standpoint, wanting people to like see what you've made and like host it and share it, and that makes a whole lot of sense. Like, since you've seen all these people who've like where the community and the platform sort of like part of the experience. I just really liked writing funny things. And experiencing funny things. So like, to me, like, a lot of my influences are things like, you remember like All That, right? Like sketch comedy that existed separate of YouTube, or comedy that had no bearing on the internet at all, are like equally valid inspirations and like I don't know, like role models for me.
Yeah, well, and a lot of my early inspiration was also still television shows. It wasn't all just people doing stuff on YouTube. It was also like Arrested Development and what else did I watch at the time? Basically just that, I guess. That's why it turned out so cool. And I did get into it because I saw people doing something I already wanted to do. I guess I don't know necessarily the experience of just purely being a consumer in that way, except for my only real example is with the Yogscast. It's the only group that's like I did used to watch daily because I just needed something on my computer screen, which I was using to work on YouTube videos. Like, I was doing my job working on YouTube, but then independently of that, I was also watching this other YouTube channel just for content, and they were doing stuff that I never was going to make or never really had any interest in doing, like what they were doing.
Right.
But I did enjoy watching them and their team, and it was still inspirational because watching them work on stuff together was definitely some of the inspiration behind, like, I need that sort of vibe with my group, you know. But I was much more of a consumer for that. But that's about as close as I've gotten. For the most part, I definitely was into it because of the sort of inspiration it gave me more than just pure entertainment. And so with the last bit, I don't know how long we've been recording because our podcast messed up halfway through. But probably the other thing to address here is what we were doing during this time with our channel that led up to then having a moderately successful YouTube channel. While I was looking at all these videos on Newgrounds, I started desperately trying to figure out how to make my own. So like I said, I brought Robert Benfer's webcam and tried to make clay animations.
I would say, just for the record, you did not try. You were successful. You did. There's like a really, really finite number of people who have ever done that. And specifically, a much fewer number who have ever decided that Robert Benfer was the correct role model to emulate while doing it, instead of something like Wallace and Gromit or like, dare I say, good content. So it's like you and Benfer, man, I'm pretty sure like y'all are holding that one tight. You get to claim that medal.
That's probably true. Not a lot of people did. I got further than Ben Wyatt on my claymation.
It's true. It's true. He's like, he came up when I was thinking about this. Like, that's the only other person I can think who had any sort of experience like what you and Robert Benfer have done.
Make this. I wasn't depressed yet. So I really wanted Flash, though. That was the big golden ticket.
Yeah.
But it was $700, and I was in middle school, so I was not...
Right. This is $700 in $2002, which would now actually buy still only Flash because Adobe will not stop inflating the price.
Insane,
it is now $7 million a month.
You can't buy them outright anymore. They just stopped doing that because capitalism and shit. They just figured out that they can get more money if you charge monthly. So I don't even think it's an option. I still have a hard copy of the last hard copy version of the Adobe Creative Suite, and I'm holding on to that for when I get completely fed up with the Adobe subscription, just to boot that back up so I have a basic version of like Photoshop and stuff. Because you know what? Not that much has changed either. It still kind of works the same way. They just have to keep coming up with new dumb things to add to it to justify making a new version.
I too have lots of deep-seated rage about Adobe's pricing model that affects me on a day-to-day basis because I definitely pay for the products, and that affects my life.
Is leprosy even popular anymore? Do people do that? Was like a whole thing back then.
Actually, it's much more popular. Well, it goes in waves, right? It's as studies will. Piracy is a whole nother topic, but in general, like you'll find studies that show like convenience is the biggest way to stop piracy. If you can just like give some amount of money that somebody will go, yeah, okay. And you don't like make them jump through 18 hoops and like sign away their firstborn's like, gene pool to an AI bot. Like they'll go, okay, that's way easier than. So as we've all these streaming services have like splintered into 18 million sub services, and Adobe's pricing model not only gets like more expensive but way more complicated. Oh yeah, it's super back on the rise. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, no, I remember when Netflix first came out and everybody just kind of was like, okay, this is easier, so that's I'll do that instead. Anyway, I couldn't get a hold of Flash, and I had a very like I wasn't just gonna get handed Flash either. So what I ended up doing was finding a $45 animation program at Walmart that I saved up for. It was called Anime Studio 5. And I bought that, and I learned how to use that unbelievably garbage piece of software over a summer. And I made a 14-minute long animated cartoon.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know.
Jeez.
I thought maybe this happened to me at some point, but I've always been like this.
Crazy. So, okay, here's the, to keep it on theme, like, or just like keep revisiting our themes here. How does Anime Studio 5 work under the hood? Here's the real question.
They don't even know.
Like this is why it's important. Has it, like, if you found a CD of it, right, and you put it in, would it still work? Has it outlived Flash?
I don't know.
Is it, after all, the superior software?
I cannot imagine that it would run on anything you put it in now. It barely ran on the stuff that I put it in before. Weirdly, because computers were all sort of like janky, they also were accidentally really compatible with each other.
Right.
So I think I actually installed Anime Studio on school computers without permission a few times so that I could use it in class. Because you just come in and pop the disc in. And it wasn't a big software. but it was rough. But I made this cartoon called Yoda's Christmas, which was just fan fiction, actually, like looking back on it. And released that, and that was like my first big foray into trying anything.
And to date, it remains actually the best Star Wars Christmas special anybody has ever made.
That's probably, you know what's crazy is eventually once I grew up and met my now wife, the group of friends she was a part of, there was a guy in there that had grown up watching Yoda's Christmas as like a Christmas tradition with his siblings for the last several years.
That's just so messed up. Like that just says so much more about him than you. I'm sorry. Like that's not always the case. There are times when like our fame, such as it is, like crosses into like a kind of a cool space. But this is not it. I don't like. That's not like that's not a thing.
Good example. It's kind of a good sample of like old YouTube even though, right? Because like that doesn't happen now. There's too much stuff. Like the fact that somebody could have found that video because they were just into Star Wars things, and there were few enough Star Wars parodies on YouTube.
Well, that's it. Like
had shown up.
Once again, it's all about effort. You actually like, so this is I think, so I was like, to amend my statement earlier, I said like you had to have some sort of like skill to produce something, and I think that's kind of true, but I think it's worth nuancing. You only actually had to have the skill to create the animation, right? Like this is the crazy thing about like what made Newgrounds such a Wild West is like there are so many aspects of creativity that go into creating a story, a video, like a narrative, right? And you can be bad at so many of them, but like really bullheadedly like effortful at just producing an animation.
That is very true.
And that's the bar you had to clear. So this is not actually, Yoda's Christmas is not particularly fit into this bucket, but there's so many like these old Flash animations I watched. It was like, they're just objectively just awful in terms of like, I don't know, joke writing, voice acting, concepting.
But I thought they were the funniest thing.
Well, they made it, right? That somebody had an idea and they put it on a computer, and I'm watching their idea. And that was like
doing it like
that was worth appreciating.
People. Right. It's sort of that like you like the you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend mentality.
Right. Yeah.
Like you just had to be better than like the rest of YouTube, which was not that hard to do.
And you were competing with the Star Wars Christmas special. So like
right.
That's a really slow friend.
Anyway, so once I made that was like proof enough to my parents that I was like serious about this stuff, and then they bought me Flash. So after that, I started posting stuff to Newgrounds, and that's when I did. If you don't know who I am and you're listening to this podcast, and you've ever seen Fable 2 Experience, that was mine. I had one video on the front page for a bit called No Service that was the guy trying to get into the fancy restaurant because he wanted a burrito, and he has like a tie-dye shirt and pants on. And just because I saw that guy at a restaurant at some point and thought it was funny.
Right. Which I still maintain, and I will maintain throughout the history of this podcast, I certainly hope, is actually our strength. Constantly. Like why our creativity is like worth putting out there. Like why I think my writing and like the things I write are worth sharing, and why I think like we specifically are very compatible in producing stuff, is like the ability to observe something, go, that's so stupid and I love it, and then make that enjoyable to somebody else.
That's art, right? That's sort of the whole point, is you do stuff that's like unique to your experience, and so it doesn't feel like anybody else's.
It's kind of
that little bit of.
It's interesting because since then I've learned there are so many other ways to make comedy that I just like I just never did. But like the observational I don't know, it's like a hilarious nihilism sort of thing of like, that's so stupid, it means nothing, I love it. Let's like just pointing and laughing but enjoy at something is like, it's not always the most common form of comedy available, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's probably our niche, and I think the people that will have watched our videos have enjoyed that part of it specifically. Anyway,
sorry, I was derailing from your timeline of fame.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to. I don't know how long this episode's been going, so I just wanted to cover the rest of the time. I did animations for a few years. They took a really long time. At some point, I realized I didn't enjoy animating all that much, and wanted to move into doing actual film stuff. I went to film school of sorts. I don't specifically recommend it.
I think it's very interesting because you definitely like you went to film. I'm not sure that you went to school. Like
yeah, I went to a place where I filmed things, and during that time, that was sort of my second gifted equipment was my parents got me a camcorder that recorded to HD DV tape. And and with that we filmed I think some of the first videos that do show up on the binge watch list. So there's not I don't want to necessarily get into talking about those individual ones.
Right. No, I believe that camcorder, like, I mean, well, geez, that was the first
year of videos.
Yeah, no, that was a good long time.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that was, yeah, I
we had that until I could buy a digital camera myself.
Yeah, and so that's like, I don't know, that's, yeah, a very significant portion of our runtime, really.
Yeah. No, I have a weirdly high amount of experience transferring analog video footage into Premiere for someone my age.
Which is basically what Robert Benford was doing, but with Play-Doh and Flash, as I recall.
True. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what the conclusion is necessarily, but it was just it was I guess it was much more untread ground than I realized at the time. Is kind of the weird thing. I guess that's my recollection looking back on it now. Is I remember feeling like I'm so behind. Like that was always my thought at the time was like all these other people are doing all this stuff and it's going to take me forever to learn how to do it and build up a fan base. And I like being famous and making money off the internet was not a job at the time that I discovered that it might be possible. And I remember having this goal of like I want to get like a fan email. Like that was my like my thing. I was like I feel like if I got like someone emailing me complimenting a thing I made, it would just like feel like I had like made it, you know, like I had accomplished something. I had and I definitely had like full on, you know, dreams of fame, but like internet fame. Like I wanted to
It's so weird that phrase just
famous on Newgrounds. Like
that phrase just means something totally different now. Like internet fame is like the opposite of what it was. Like being internet famous was like a dig at somebody back then. Like and now it's like the way to be famous, right? It's so crazy. I will say so. I think it's interesting to hear you like go through your thought process of like. Wanting to scramble because you feel like you were behind in everything. Because like going back, what from an outside experience, sort of from a converging into your experience, right? Looking at what you were doing from the outside, I've like what was different is unlike all those Flash animations I just threw under the bus. Everything you did was good. You were just funny. Like it was
you gotta be careful because I don't want this to devolve into one of those things where we just sort of like compliment ourselves the whole time.
No, this is like, well, this is great.
Neil Druckmann this.
I can do this because I was not involved in any of these, right? Like this is well before
I'll allow it this one time.
I think my first interaction is I recorded like a voice line for the recut of Yoda's Christmas, which never aired.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think like that was. But before, like,
what was I was just gonna reanimate the whole thing or something,
probably
insane like that.
Well, with Flash, so you know the powerhouse that is Flash. But no, like no service, like a Fable 2 experience. They were well written. They were funny. The art was good, and that was like you know you had comedic timing. That's like 4 things out of which most popular Newgrounds, like successful Newgrounds content, had like 2.
I will give myself this, that I definitely analyzed why things worked at the time and what made things like good and tried really hard to imitate those things. And looking back on it finally with the hindsight of 10 plus years, I can look at some of those old things and be like, okay, I get it. I understand why people enjoyed this. And
also,
why it worked.
I think it's worth pointing out that I think we'll be able. Like, I'm not too afraid of like praising ourselves sometimes because one of my lessons along this journey from the birth to the death of YouTube is that being good at something isn't super important a lot of the time. It is often a giant waste of time. So it's not like 100% a compliment.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's the big lesson. That's what we'll be uncovering as we go along this long meandering trail that we've set out for ourselves. Is that all this effort was certainly not the path to fame and riches that we thought it might kind of coincidentally be.
Right.
Well, I guess we've reached the actual start point, so we'll end
right.
here.
I guess we should. I think I just get that. I should mention Monty Python somewhere. I don't know why. That's
Sure.
involved, right? Monty Python existed. That's important. It made fun of the people who were making it, and that's like half of what we did for like forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, self like what's the word? Self-defacing humor is definitely
deprecating, defacing.
Yeah, it's definitely big in our repertoire.
We already mentioned Knox. We mentioned Charlie Unicorn, and we could something salad fingers. But if anything, that was a negative.
I never watched Salad Fingers.
That was also the Charlie the Unicorn guy, right? Isn't it?
No, that was a different guy.
Is it?
No.
Okay.
Similar veins of deranged, but not the same person.
Yeah, and that was a man. That could have.
It's pretty interesting who came out of it and who's still around these days too. Because it's not a lot of people, but of all people, the one guy that I kind of made friends with on the site, Jazza, he's still going super strong. He's got a YouTube channel that he does art stuff on and has been doing for years.
Cool.
Makes
great guy.
Supports his family off of that. Isn't massive, but is
enough.
Doing pretty good. Rice Pirate is a professional voice actor now. You think we would ever have seen that coming?
Nah. You know what's funny? I don't know his name.
It's Mick Lauer. Ever seen that name pop up on anything? It's
probably. But what is, and now I think the most important part of this recap here, what actually happened to Robert Benford? What is he doing?
I have no idea.
He's like this.
He moved. Last I've heard of, he moved to LA, and then I talked to Dom Farah because he was in a video of ours and tried out for Skyvault. There's so many.
Yeah, he did do that. That's right.
That pop into my head occasionally. Like
bizarre.
I'll just wake up and be like, "Why was I in Aziz Ansari's book?"
Right.
Anyway, I talked to Dom, and they were friends, so I was like, "Hey, what's the deal with that guy?" and he was like, none of us really know. He'll show up sometimes, and he'll usually be working on something, but half the time we will never see it. So I don't know.
He's got this like that. It's like a Bobby Fischer thing, like an Andy Kaufman thing,
much.
I don't know.
Definitely like who was it? Was it is it Seth Green? Was he the big like? That was his
Seth, the Robot Chicken guy.
I think so.
There's also Tom Green who did the same thing, but in a very different way.
Oh, it's Tom Green.
Yeah.
No, that's I got the wrong Green. It's Tom Green. Tom Green is the one that he was in.
Yeah, that makes more sense because it's way more deranged and way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess they just kind of plateaued. Everyone does eventually because you realize, you know what, this is all really stupid.
Yeah. Stop doing what isn't fun.
Right.
I think there's probably worth a disclaimer. I do really enjoy Robert Benford. I feel like maybe I've been a little too incisive here. Not that I think that anything I've said is wrong, but I do enjoy his content. Good guy, maybe, probably. Good stuff.
I mean, I have him to thank for getting me into all this in the first place. Should I ever be able to talk to him, which I have tried very hard.
Sounds like other people have too, So.
Yeah. He's an enigma.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully this was entertaining. If you're unfamiliar with this, it certainly was a good intro to, I feel, me and Ian.
Yeah.
And starting next week, we're just going to hit the first video of the binge watch list, and we're just going to go through one at a time and just see how far we can go. Because, what's the longest we've done a podcast? Like 30 episodes, maybe at most?
Well, so we have to we have to distinguish between the longest in like number of episodes and the longest like over a consistent time frame, because I think those are different.
That's true. I was thinking just number of episodes. And I think actually
probably
the one that has topped it is Oops All Tangents from Patreon. And I'm pretty sure we hit like 34 or something.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
see, that's what I mean. Like, we were batch producing those. We did 5 in a go, you know?
I
Like,
know, and we still didn't make it past that.
Right. Like, in terms of
this
like
one-
on balance, White Noise 2, we got to at least beat White Noise 2. That's my line.
Yeah, I agree. We have a number that we're aiming for this time with like an actual reason for it. So hopefully that
Right.
helps. So thanks for listening. We will be back next week. These are going to be released Wednesdays. That's the plan. And I'll try to post something on YouTube if one isn't going to come out, because we're going to try to record like multiple at once whenever we do this. And we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.